Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to another segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. We continue with Asa Ki Var, composition of the first Nanak, and we will be considering the 17th pauri, or stanza or step, if you will. And in this pauri, Babaji continues with his very sharp critique of Indian society and the practices, and he uses simple logic to demolish a lot of the long-standing prevailing practices. Now, this is not to say that those practices don't persist, they do, but we should appreciate what the Guru is telling us. So here's the recitation of the first salok. Salok Mahalla Pehla. Je Mohaka Ghar Muhai Pitri de. Agge Vast Sinyaniye Pitri Chor Kare. Vadiye Hath Dalal Ke Musfi Eh Kare. Nanak Agge So Mile Je Khatte Kale De. Je Mohaka Ghar Muhai. Mohaka is a thief, a small-time robber. So if a thief robs a house, Ghar Muhai, and then offers that loot, what he has stolen, the stolen goods, Ghar Muhai, as an offering to his dead ancestors, Pitri De. Je Mohaka Ghar Muhai Pitri De. So here, the Guru is referring to the practice of Shraddh, where one offers material goods to one's dead ancestors in order to appease their spirit. So there is this notion that their spirits won't rest until they receive these goods. And we will see how the Brahmin is involved in this, the Pandit. So the Guru says, well, so let's say that he offers these material things, which is usually foodstuff and clothing. Then the Guru says, then by that logic, the stolen goods would be identified by the ancestors of the victims. Makes sense. Agge vast sinyaniye pitri. The ancestors of the victim will recognize those goods. Then what happens? Pitri chor kare. Your ancestors will be deemed as thieves. So, what sense do you make of that? So who does he hold responsible for this state of affairs? Vadiye hath dalal ke. He calls the Brahmin the dalal, the middleman. Vadiye hath, to chop off the hands of the middleman. Musfi e kare. He says, well, that's what justice calls for. Evidently, that was the punishment for thieves. So Nanak agge so mile je khatte kale de. We reap what we sow with diligence here. We don't pass things on to the non-material world. And he's recommending vadiye hath dalal ke, that is justice for the Brahmin, for having trapped innocent people into this web of deceit. So you see, this practice remains quite popular even now. And the second salok, ज्यों जोरू सिर नावणी आवे वारो वार झूठे झूठे झूठा मुख वसै नित नित होए ख्वार सूचे एह न आखिए बहन जे पिंडा तोए सूचे सेई नानका जिन मन वसया सोए. So here Babaji is commenting on ideas of bodily and ritual purity and pollution, which are deeply embedded in Indian society, in its rituals, its practices, its social customs. And these are based on ancient texts and traditions and beliefs. And so they have rather significant implications in daily life, social interactions, and spiritual practices. So the Guru is giving us one example of how women are considered, or were considered, still are in some segments, I guess, the idea of their menstrual cycle rendering them impure. Jyon joru sirnavani ave varo var. He says, look, a woman's cycle occurs regularly, ave varo var. Jute juta mukha vase. Mukh is the mouth, but here it symbolizes the body. And this juta is that which has been corrupted, spoiled. So what he's saying is, and he's referring to the toxicity, the toxins within the body, the impurities within the body. Vase, nit nit hoye khwar. The point he's making is that just as a woman's menstruation occurs regularly, so do the impurities within the body. Juta mukha vase. What he's saying is these are natural processes. But, he says, people are needlessly distressed because they associate these rhythms with impurity of the body. Another way of looking at this is to say that the body is always impure because it has a good bit of impurities that it expels through its natural processes. You see? To maintain its homeostasis. So these are natural rhythms. And he says, do not associate purity with the body, with washing the body. Suche eh na akhiye. It is not those who appear clean after a wash or a dip at a pilgrimage. Ben je pinda toe, washing the body. They should not be deemed pure. The Guru says, pure are they, suche sei, in whose minds, jin man, that one has come to abide. Vasya soi. So purity is not a physical thing, but it is actually a virtue of the mind. And it comes from internalizing the wisdom of the self. So in Sikhi, purification implies removing the impurity of the ego, haume, which distorts our vision of reality. And then in the Pauri, Ture palane paun veg, har rangi haram savarya, kothe mandap maniya, lai baithe kar pasarya, cheej karan man paam de, har bujjan nahi harya, कर फरमाए सिखाया वेख महलत मरण विसारिया जर आई जो बनहारिया. So the Guru is now speaking about our materialistic obsession with wealth, with goods, with pleasure, to where we lose connection with our source, with ourselves. It gives rise to a sense of self-alienation. It deludes us. Our obsession with the material is a delusion that this is permanent. We forget the inevitability of death. So he speaks of what we desire. Ture palane paun veg. Horses with studded saddles. Ture palane, ture is a horse. That run like the wind. Paun veg. Har rangi, we want every pleasure. Haram savarya. And the pleasures of the harem. We construct an array of forts, palaces and mansions. Kothe mandapa maadiyan laye, baithe kar pasarya, and then we sit in them. We do things as we please. In other words, we follow the dictates of our mind, our impulse. Cheej karan manapam vade. And what happens? Har bujjana nahi. You lose discernment of the har within. You lose the connection with yourself. Harya, you lose the game of life. You're a loser, in other words. Karfurmai Sakhaya, you make demands for consumption. You listen to what let's say your palate wants to eat. Vekamalat, engrossed in wealth making, losing sight of the inevitability of death. Marana Visarya. But guess what? Babaji says, Jare ai jobana harya. Youth is lost, it fades away, and it is old age that comes, overtakes youth, and hands you the final defeat, death. So these are practices that obviously were prevalent, still are, and Guru Nanak is using simple logic to show us the fallacy of this thinking. So in other words, use your reason, stay connected with your source, be guided by wisdom, and you will save yourself the stupidity of some of these practices. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.